My name is Chip House. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at SharpSpring. Thank you for joining us today. We've got people dialing in from across the country, across the globe. And so I know it's different time zones everywhere. And I believe many of you who are on the session today are registered, and some might be joining us via the streaming platforms, YouTube, etc. So welcome to all of you, of course. So we are here for the CMOs, or excuse me, what CMOs say when you're not in the room and how it can help you grow your agency. Insights and advice from agency expert Karl Sakas. I'll be introducing Karl in a second. We have over a few thousand agencies that partner with SharpSpring and about 10,000 businesses on the platform. If you're not familiar with SharpSpring, we're a revenue growth platform, and we help agencies build higher value relationships and drive measurable results for your clients, and also create a recurring revenue stream, helping you reach the right leads with targeted communication, win more customers with things like dynamic personalization, and convert deals faster with just a number of different revenue generation features inside of the platform. Again, this session is really for agency leaders and other digital marketing leaders, and we would love to show you the comprehensive platform that we have. In fact, so much that you can get a SharpSpring concert t-shirt if you register for a demo of the platform. Again, we'd love to show it to you. And we have a few different options for t-shirts. Of course, you can get your size. If you signed up for a demo when you registered for the series, you're going to get a chance to do that. Otherwise, I'd encourage you use that QR code and sign up for a demo, or just visit the homepage and sign up for a demo. And that's one of the versions of the t-shirts that you can get. I think it's a ton of fun. Just staying on concert theme. And so I'm just going to do a few housekeeping items here before we launch into the rest of the series. So if you have questions, we'll be taking questions really throughout, and you can chat them in at any time via the panel on the side there. Hopefully you're seeing that. All of the phones are muted, so that's really kind of your main way to interact with Karl and I. And we are definitely going to be sharing the recording with you afterward. So we definitely want you to stick around also throughout the series, the complete series here today, about 45 minutes or so. You can claim your exclusive concert t-shirt again if you get a demo, and then we're going to have a grand prize giveaway at the very end of the session, and that's going to be a ton of fun. It's a ticket giveaway, and basically anybody that has registered prior to about 10 a.m. this morning will have a chance to win some of those tickets. So now here we go to Karl. So again, we've had Karl on a few different webinars in the past. He is an agency consultant, and he's an executive coach. And if you're not familiar with Karl's work, he draws on his background in agency operations to help agencies grow profitably. Joining us from Raleigh, North Carolina, here's Karl Sakas. Welcome,
Chip,
Karl.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
If we haven't met before, here's a thumbnail about me. I've worked with hundreds of agencies, one-on-one on every inhabited continent as an agency consultant, coach, and trainer. I'm the author of 2 books and over 400 articles on agency management. Outside of work, I volunteer as a bartender on an antique train, mixing martinis at 100 miles an hour. Yes, there's the photo. There's proof. Been doing that for over a decade.
That's so fun. I love that photo, Karl.
I know. How would you like your martini today, Chip?
I like them dirty, actually. Good olive dirty martini is perfect for me.
Excellent. All right. Well, I will make arrangements for that.
Okay.
But the reason everyone is here today, although all of my consulting work is with agencies, I run a CMOs only mastermind group. No agencies allowed, through a marketing association. And I'll be sharing some key insights from that experience, being the only non-CMO in the room, how that can help you grow your agency when, based on what they say, when you are not around. Earlier at the opening of the series, Jay Baer mentioned the 11 agency and digital marketing problems, and we're looking at touching on in different ways about 5 of them today. primarily about better connecting with your target audience if your target audience is CMOs or other brand side marketing leaders. So being in the room with the CMOs, if you're joining us live, please share in chat. My question for you is this: what do you want to know about CMOs? What do you want to know about CMOs? Share that in chat. Now, I've been running the CMO Only Mastermind group since 2016, no agencies allowed, and we've created it as a safe space, and we follow the Chatham House rule. And the Chatham House rule says you're allowed to discuss what is discussed, to share that outside the room, with one catch: no names and no other identifying information. Now, the brands in the group include some brands you may know of. I can't share them. In a range of industries: technology, hospitality, financial services, B2B, B2C, and more. That brings us to today. Ultimately, what to expect. I promise you three things. First, we'll talk about what your agency needs to start doing so you don't lose key accounts. We'll talk about what CMOs really care about today and how this can either help or hurt your agency. I hope you'll apply the advice to help your agency. And how to enlist CMOs to share a bigger slice of their budget with your agency, with your team. My goal is to give you some new ideas to think of. There are, of course, exceptions. Every CMO is different. They are individuals. And I'll also share a resource, stick around to the end, to help you better connect with the CMOs in your agency's life. But first, let's consider, what are CMOs dealing with today? Because they're dealing with a lot of challenges, both at work and at home. As I lead the CMO group, I hear about some interesting characters. For instance, when the pandemic started in 2020, many of the CMOs reported that their CEO was pressuring them to push, promote, sell. And that's a problem, of course, because, yes, that might get some short-term bumps in revenue, but it's not a long-term play, right? It could hurt their brand. And so CMOs were under pressure from flighty or sometimes panicky CEOs. And that, of course, was extending down to the agencies the CMO was working with. The CMOs were often pushing back, but some of that depended on their political power within the organization. It's not just the CEO, there's the CFO. I hear about the CFO a lot in the CMO group because the CFO is the money person. Day to day, the CMO has their own budget, of course, but if they want a significant amount of, additional budget, get $1 million for a new marketing initiative, they have to persuade the CFO that it makes sense. And the CFO is numbers driven. I mean, that's their job. But that creates some challenges where the CMO has all these things they'd like to do, some of which could involve hiring your agency to help, but they have to get through the CFO as the financial gatekeeper. And if you've ever had some flaky clients at your agency, well, CMOs are dealing with some of the same challenges. As the pandemic started, I was hearing from a lot of the agencies I work with and beyond saying things like, our pipeline has slowed or stopped. People were interested and they don't seem to want to buy. It's a problem. But at the same time, I was hearing from the CMOs, our sales pipeline has slowed or even stopped. People were interested and they don't want to buy now. The exact same problem. And of course, it varied by client and company. If they were focusing on e-commerce, things tended to be going a bit better, but then they had supply chain problems. So flaky customers, not just an agency challenge, flaky clients, your CMO clients may be having some of the same problems. And this list, this is just what they face at work. What about at home? Well, consider where CMOs are in life and in their career. They're under a lot of pressure at home now. Often they are empty nesters or almost empty nesters. At one of the CMO events, one of the members said that her third child was graduating from college in the coming year, and that year would mark 14 years of paying tuition for the various kids. It sounded like it was time for an international vacation. Or kids may be heading away or off to college, or maybe boomeranging back. For one of the CMOs, they downsized to a smaller house after all the kids were away, only for the pandemic to happen, and everyone came back along with some significant others and pets and so on. So, imagine like 7 or 8 people trying to work from the same now smaller house. No fun. The stakes are high. As the CMO, they are in a top role in their career track, unless they want to pursue becoming a CEO. And so as they're near their peak earning potential, there's a question of what's next. Through the CMO group, one of our most popular events in our quarterly meetups was what I euphemistically called career management for CMOs. Now, I called it that because they were going to get the calendar invite and their coworkers might see what the invite said. But really, the most attended event was how to find your next job as a CMO, right? You've seen the info about, shorter CMO tenure and things like that. They're looking for what's next. Now, your agency could help them with that, or maybe not. The final thing outside of work is time marches on. Was at an event where a couple of CMOs were talking about their experience realizing they needed reading glasses, and time marches on, and they're also starting to worry about pending age discrimination. So as an agency, if that's what CMOs are dealing with at work and at home, what can you do to be helpful? Well, that's the key lesson from today. If you were to take just one takeaway from this session, it's this: CMOs are human too. They might seem like a mythical figure, yet they are human. And if you can understand the context of their professional and personal situation, you can position your agency as the helper that makes the CMO the hero, in the hero's journey, story brand, and so on, and your agency can grow. Let's take a look at 3 further takeaways to help you apply this as you grow your agency this year and beyond. Tip number 1, what is something your agency needs to start doing immediately so you don't lose key accounts? Well, it's about really getting to know your clients. Do you really know your clients? If you don't, that may be a challenge, because otherwise you're going to risk losing them to someone who does invest the time to get to know them rather than just their professional self. That includes getting to know their personal and professional goals. Not everyone will want to share, but many will. As a proxy, when I'm consulting with agencies about account management and client relationships, one of the things I'll ask is, thinking about all of the clients you work with, for each client, do you know the names of their family members? Do you know the names of their pets, their hobbies, their birthday? If you don't, I suspect your clients wouldn't say that your agency really knows them. And of course, just because you know it, make sure that your team knows as well. Take a look at their LinkedIn profile, see their career trajectory. You could probably make some predictions about what they're looking to do next. In my 5 years of running the CMO group, some people have been in the same job, but more often people change jobs. One of the members has been through like 5 different jobs. Between a mix of corporate actions and other things. So people are looking. They're looking for their next role and getting to know them as people. So if you do know them, excellent. That's great. But make sure your team knows your clients as well. Because ideally, as you grow your agency, if you're an agency owner, you're not the account manager for every single client, but your team needs to get to know your clients as well. So the thing to do to avoid losing any of your accounts is get to know your clients, both personally and professionally. Tip number 2, what's the thing that CMOs really care about today? And how can this either help or hurt your agency? Well, consider the John Wanamaker quote, merchant from 100 years ago. He supposedly said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. Did he say that or not? I don't know, but it's a good quote. Now, if you were a revenue rock star, I imagine you do know which half, and you've optimized it to make things even better. Which leads us to the second tip, which is, given that CMOs are under pressure to produce and to perform in their job, how can you position your agency as their ally, their helper, to make the CMO the hero in getting things done in their work? You've probably seen the articles about shorter tenure for CMOs in their job. They're under scrutiny from the CEO, the CFO, remember they want to know about the numbers, their team, their customers, and the board. And if you've ever wondered, by the way, why a CMO wasn't getting back to you promptly, one of the CMOs in the CMO group, I needed to reach out to him by phone to coordinate something. I called his work number, and instead of going to voicemail, it said that his voicemail wasn't set up at his job. I was like, he's been there a couple of years. Like, why hasn't he set up his voicemail? I had his mobile number. Always nice when you have the CMO's mobile number. And I called him and we sorted it out. And I said, by the way, your work voicemail isn't set up. And he worked at a company that did MarTech software. And he said, I just avoided setting it up because the only voicemails I was getting was from MarTech salespeople. And then he thought for a moment, could sort of imagine the gears turning. He said, I guess my MarTech salespeople run into that problem too. Yeah. So, it helps to reach people where they are. Now, what can you do if CMOs are under all of this pressure to produce? Well, one is to establish revenue attribution metrics and map those marketing activities to revenue. If you're using software like SharpSpring, there are a lot of built-in pieces to that. As I'm in the midst of the process of shifting to SharpSpring myself, I'm really excited about all the attribution tools and possibilities there. Definitely exciting stuff. So you don't have to wonder which half is working, both for yourself and for your clients. And if you're doing some things that aren't as clear from a revenue attribution standpoint, you want to identify what else you can do, and more on that in a moment. And here's the thing, the CMOs in the mastermind group keep talking about revenue attribution. We've had 3 sessions about revenue attribution over the past several years. And yet many agencies aren't talking about revenue attribution. Now, as a revenue rock star, I imagine you are, or you're starting that, you're exploring that. If you can't help your clients with revenue attribution, you're going to lose them to someone who can. So do that and help them out. And, of course, you'll want to dig deeper, understanding different revenue attribution models and which to recommend for clients to different scenarios. And that may include exploring further specialized software like Bizible, which comes up a lot in the CMO group, Bizible. But that leads us to, the third point for today, which is how can you enlist CMOs to share a bigger slice of their budget? Because, your agency can help. You'd like to help them. You'd like to get paid to do that help. The solution, if you want to get a bigger slice of the budget, is to identify and agree on metrics. Start by understanding how the CMO is evaluated. As I said, CMOs are under a lot of pressure to produce, to meet their goals. You need to understand what their goals are, what the metrics are, because then you can map your activities to what they're trying to do. Make them the hero. And remember, the CMO is in charge of day-to-day budget, but they need to go to the CFO to get more. When the CFO says, okay, you want another $1 million, what's the return on investment? Your job is to give the data and perhaps the story behind what the ROI might be. What that $1 million will produce. Will it bring in $5 million, $2 million, $100 million? I don't know. But if the CMO goes to the CFO requesting more money without any sense of what the return on investment, the ROI might be, they're probably not going to get approved, and you're probably not going to get the extra budget at your agency. And that includes better understanding, the cadence of what clients need. For instance, as an agency project manager, I inherited a client from a previous PM, and I had heard that they were difficult and kind of squirrely, hard to track down, slow to respond. And I thought, as their new contact, as the PM/account manager, I would try to reset the relationship. So I reached out, set up a time with them, and it'll be in a couple weeks before we could talk. And I said I'd like to get a better idea of what you're dealing with at your organization. And one of the questions I asked her, I said, on your priorities list, where does this particular work fit into your list of priorities? She laughed and she said, this is like number 9 on my list. She wasn't squirrely because she was trying to avoid us. This was just low on her list. And we ended up digging in to understand what she needed. And it turned out she needed to report on quarterly progress before every quarterly board meeting. There were other things we could do, but ultimately she needed the bullet point or a couple bullet points for the board meeting. As a result, I was able to work with my team to slow things down. We didn't need to push as fast as we thought they wanted. We had the quarterly update. I sent that over to her, so she got to look like the hero. Yeah, we wrote it, but it's our job to make our clients look good. And we kept working with them. And my team wasn't as frustrated about, how slow things were going. And that includes, depending on your client, some sort of turnkey reports on ROI and other KPIs. You want to customize that to the client, but ideally you're not having to manually create that every single time. And also, think about your client's future career. That might include even drafting some future resume bullets. You can decide whether you directly share them or not, but if you think in terms of what they want to accomplish in their job to leverage getting their next job, you can find ways to help make that happen. And you may actually share the bullets as well. You also want to consider keeping what we could think of as a highlights reel of successes. The idea there is that, what are the wins that you get for them, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. I maintain a kudos file when I get particular comments from my clients, and also think about details for future case studies. That highlights reel, if you maintain that, can also come in handy if the client's CMO changes. There's a joke that when there's a new executive, they have 3 jobs to do: hire someone, fire someone, and rearrange the furniture, because they want to show their boss that they're getting things done. Sometimes your agency gets hired, sometimes you get fired, sometimes you get rearranged. If you've got a highlights reel to show to the new CMO or the new marketing leader, VP, director, what have you, if you demonstrate that you've done a good job for the company before and you are ready to make them look good too, and help the company, of course, odds are stronger about sticking around through the CMO transition. And yes, you may still need to do something of a new sales pitch, but you won't be starting from scratch. Speaking of sales, I have a resource for you. Now, we're going to start Q&A shortly. I see questions have coming in on chat already. Look forward to hearing, Chip, which ones you want to share. But in the meantime, I've created a special resource for you, and you get free access thanks to SharpSpring. Go to bit.ly/agency workbook. I've created a fast fail sales process, because often we end up wasting time on potential clients who aren't ready for our help. The better you can connect with CMOs who want and need your help now, the sooner you can help them and avoid wasting time on people who aren't ready. I've got a whole process for that, and I'm sharing that with you through the workbook, free of charge. You'll also get my newsletter for agency leaders. If you go to bit.ly, bit.ly, all lowercase, agency workbook, you can get instant access to that via email, plus agency tips after that, which more than one agency owner has said is one of the only emails they read every time. Ultimately, it'll help you better connect with CMOs, both your current clients, if you're looking at upsells, and your new clients as well. So get the Fast Fail Sales Process Workbook and the newsletter at bit.ly/agency workbook. Now, I see we have some questions. Looking forward to answering your questions. Chip, what is the first question?
That was great, Carl. But by the way, and I should have said it going into it, right? That because I am a CMO, I mean this content is super interesting to me. And as you said, CMOs are very much human. A lot of what you shared there was really relevant and certainly resonated with me. And definitely want to dig into some of the comments about metrics and things like that, and the things that CMOs think about and worry about, and how agencies can assist. So really excited that we've got great engagement on questions. So hey, so the first one that came in was from Stephanie, and I thought this was just sort of an open-ended, interesting question. What are CMOs afraid of, Carl? And maybe it's sort of a corollary to the question Christian asks, what keeps them up at night? So maybe loop both those in together, if you would.
One of the things that I've noticed is that although CMOs are focusing at the higher level of what needs to happen, sometimes they get sucked into the details, and they're not going to be an expert on the details. That's an opportunity for your agency to be the expert. So you're thinking strategically, but when the CMO is like, I've heard about such and such going on, like, what do I need to know about that? If you're the one briefing them on it so that they can, sound smart to their team and their CEO, that's a good way to position yourself. Another thing that's keeping them up at night is, just as the same is happening with agencies right now, attracting and retaining employees. One of the CMOs, and this was a couple years before the current hiring crunch, had mentioned they'd hired an entry-level person for $50,000 a year. And after 1 year in the job, they had gotten an offer for like $75,000. And the CMO's advice, one of their VPs was like, what do we do? Like,
Sure.
The CMO's advice was they should take it because we can't match that. And so, there's shorter tenure in marketing roles, brand side and agency side. That's also a growth opportunity. There are employees who, for your agency as a service, there are people who do not want to work at agencies. They want to work in-house. Your agency can help clients find those employees and vet them and screen them and so on. If we think about agency services, there are 3 buckets that I have: think, teach, do. Think is strategy, teach is training and empowerment, do is implementation. Under the teach bucket, you can get paid to help clients find new people. And by the way, they will really appreciate your agency because you got them their job.
Those are great answers, Carl. I mean, I can tell you, what I'm afraid of, right? And it's a little bit of sort of the idea kernel, if you will, for this webinar series. It's just marketing has evolved so much in the 20 plus years that I've been doing it, and marketing, has moved far beyond sort of what you would call a vanity metric, right? And so things like just follows or opens and clicks, might be relevant overall to the marketer, but they're less relevant to the business, and they're less relevant to your sales team, And so I think what keeps me up at night relative to the agencies I'm working with is their ability to show me those results. So I think that's why this focus is so important on revenue.
And certainly for everyone listening, look at the report you send to each client each month or each quarter. How much of it is vanity metrics versus more meaningful metrics? If it's mostly vanity, you probably want to change that for the better.
Yeah, I think that CMOs in general control a lot of budget, and if they're doing it well, they are tracking how that budget is getting spent and all the different channels that they're using. And so if they're working with you as an agency, they're expecting to see a specific returns for the things that you're working on. And maybe if they're working with a evolved CFO, they get to have some of the portion of the budget carved out for brand building and content and things like that, which frankly I think is appropriate. Yeah. It can't all be right. It's not all going to necessarily deliver immediate growth that you're going to see that quarter, right? I mean, some of it as a marketer, you need to rely on to build great content and brand, and that doesn't happen overnight. So I'll get off my soapbox there, Karl, but I'm just feeling some resonance with that. So here's a great question, actually, and it's certainly timely. So Carrie asked, are CMOs outsourcing right now because hiring and keeping staff is difficult, frankly, or you've heard about the great resignation, or do you expect this surge to stop and when they bring it back in-house?
So that's definitely one of those areas that fluctuates. There was a point before the pandemic where agencies had lost a lot of business to clients taking things in-house, or maybe losing implementation work. Maybe they were still doing some strategy and coaching, but implementation was down. Then when companies, if they're facing a financial setback, it's easy to cut, agency expenses, but you can also cut payroll. The problem is once you've cut payroll, if you're working at a large corporation, it's hard to justify getting that back again. And so, as you're going to the CFO, it might be like, well, instead of adding, 5 new people and all of the payroll obligations and so on, maybe we could hire an agency to do a piece of what they were doing for less. It's not going to be the same, but it's easier to justify for many companies adding a sort of an outsourcing expense than adding headcount. That will, of course, keep fluctuating, which is why I would encourage your agency to think about think, teach, do, not just do the implementation services, which are good bread and butter, but selling strategy services and also the training and empowerment.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I know that from our standpoint, I can say, that we certainly haven't stopped outsourcing, and I think that some level of outsourcing is a best practice, actually, because of the objectivity and just the ability to augment your team, right?
Exactly.
So I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Omi asks, what do CMOs view as the most valuable in an agency and partner relationship, Karl?
Omi, hey, great to hear from you. Ultimately, it would be that the agency is a trusted advisor, that the agency has the client's best interests at heart. And, this can apply in a range of ways. I spoke with a potential client earlier this week, and they potentially could benefit from my help, but I wasn't the right match. And I pointed them to someone else, right? There's power in declining working with things. Or if it's an existing client, I had a client in years past at one of the agencies. We helped his company with a lot of things, but there are certain things we couldn't. So we actually got paid to help him define certain things to choose and find the other agency to implement it, because we knew that we wouldn't be the ones doing it based on the technologies involved. So if your client sees you as the trusted advisor, and there's a whole book series on that, the client will know and trust that you are there for them, regardless of whether you're directly getting paid. But of course, the ideal is you've got an ongoing retainer, and then you are getting paid for that advice.
I think the next question, Karl, is sort of a corollary to that one, really, which is, especially in this virtual world, right? How do I go about building the kind of personal relationships I want to with CMOs at my clients? And what are some best practices that you've seen work?
One is understanding the context of what they're dealing with. I mentioned the client who had between her and her husband and the kids and the significant others and the extra pets, there would be like 7 or 8 adults working in the house, in the smaller house. And so that's a challenge around just like noise in the background and, people having time to like grab food before the meeting. You might ideally avoid doing meetings during meal times. But, one option is to let clients choose to turn their video off, right? To say, I know it's lunchtime, if you need to grab something to eat, like it's okay to have video off. Like we don't need that. Like it's okay, sort of thing. So, that's part of, understanding that clients are human. I would also listen for things they mention. Instead of starting the meeting by immediately diving into, all right, here's the report, let's go. Ask how their week's going, ask how their weekend was. And also, importantly, listen and then ask again. So, for instance, a client recently did a camping trip. I'm going to ask how the camping trip went, kind of thing. Or at one point, a client mentioned their birthday was coming up. And I was like, oh, when this was a new client, I said, oh, when is your birthday? They mentioned the date, and I made sure to send them a card. I actually have an accordion file of cards. I have probably 150 cards at this point, organized by category, kind of thing, so that when someone mentions something, I'm ready to go. I spend over $1,000 a year on postage.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, people still appreciate letters. They really do, and things in the mail for sure. Yeah. And they might be home now, but at least part of the time. But many of them are going into the agency to pick up mail at least.
Something you might do is check in with clients if you do a year-end gift. I like sending them before Thanksgiving rather than waiting until the very end of the year. But now may be a good time to confirm their mailing address. And clients may or may not want to share their home address, but you could say, we have a package that we're going to send you. Is this the best address? And then let them decide if they want to volunteer. But really, it comes down to listening and taking action based on what you hear.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would even extend it. Get to know your customers personally, right? Not just the CMO, but pretty much anybody inside of your client that you're working with on a day-to-day basis, right?
That's a great point, because there's the idea of if you're rude to the receptionist when you arrive for the meeting, back in the more in-person days, they're going to report back on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't be rude.
No, yeah, definitely have to treat the gatekeepers with love and respect, for sure.
CMOs are human, but really everyone is human.
Everybody is, yeah.
Hey, though I do occasionally get requests about robot clients or robot employees. I'm working on it, but it's going to be a few years, so don't hold your breath.
Right. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow anyway, Karl. No. Hey, so it's not so much a question, but it came in from Nichelle, and I thought it was interesting. She said, I've learned the lesson years ago to help the client produce their internal reports, and that's a compelling thought to me, certainly, right? Is, again, back to marketing attribution and spending money with an agency. And if that agency kind of throws up their hands, and is unable to help you sort of deliver something compelling in terms of their value, that can be really frustrating for a CMO. But what are your thoughts about that? Actually, for an agency digging in and going the next mile to not only obviously run the campaign, do the strategy, whatever, but deliver the reports.
Some of that is letting clients know that you do it, right? If they don't know that you can do it, they're probably not going to magically assume. If you've started working with a client in a strategy first situation, they may not know that you can do implementation from the strategy. Or, if the client has sort of pigeonholed you as an order taker and you're just doing implementation, they may not know that you can do more strategic things. Kind of thing. So some of that includes asking clients about their priorities for the coming year, doing a sit down to talk through what they're thinking of so that you can share. Don't bill them for that meeting. If it's purely a sales meeting kind of thing, though, if it's strategizing or helping them strategize for the year, that's billable. But really, it's asking what their priorities are and asking how things have changed. And you can also look for ways to drop in examples from work with other clients. Not necessarily, identifiable, but you could say, oh, we were working with another client who had a challenge like this, and we did, this, and that. And here's how it turned out. Slipping examples into the conversation of things you've done for other clients that they might be interested in too. But your clients are not going to read your mind.
Right. Yeah. I think it's an important piece probably is really diving in and learning, your clients today, what do they use for reporting? What specific metrics are they tracking? How does their funnel work? Right.
Yes.
And then I think that the other thing that's super relevant to me is a story that hits home from a client just like me. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's probably that's a Karl Sakas best practice. I think you've mentioned before, probably. But I don't. Did any of that come out in some of the CMO discussions that you had too, Karl? Just about being able to sort of demonstrate success in the field.
That is a factor.
Yeah.
And also, having a track record can make a higher price seem less scary. One of the CMOs in the group making particular B2B software platform had mentioned that one of their outside investors had recommended, or they needed to rebrand. And so they asked the outside investor, in their case, it was a private equity firm, did they have any recommendations on agencies to do the rebrand?
Hmm.
They got a bunch of names and they reached out. And interestingly, they said they got all these proposals for these full service rebrands. And they said not a single proposal was under $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, for not an enormous company. One of the agencies, the company was in North Carolina. One of the agencies was in London. They were going to fly two people in from London for every meeting. It is a
Wow.
direct flight, but that's
Yeah.
that adds up. Now, ultimately, what they did is they went with a local agency that has a specialization in certain areas of what they were doing, and they decided rather than doing the full service rebrand, they would focus on where they needed help. So messaging, some of the overall strategy. They decided to do the in-house, use their in-house team to do things like building out new collateral. They already had people to do that. And so by decoupling the project, they ultimately got it down to only $300,000. So, that's a case where the agencies that were coming in pitching these big budget situations weren't really paying attention to what did the client want to do versus what did they want the agency to help them do.
Sure. Yeah. The discovery and getting to know again the customer personally is critical up front.
Yes.
Um, Great question here from Scott. Do CMOs see merit in shopping projects around going to tender to keep agencies cost competitive?
Sometimes. And, that may be a CMO that is perhaps a bit more mercenary. If we think about people who are mercenary in their job, they just care about the money. If there's a new CMO or a new marketing head at a client, take a look at their LinkedIn. How long have they stuck around at their previous places? If they haven't stayed anywhere longer than a year, year and a half, 2 years, they may be mercenary. They're looking for some sort of quick win. They don't really care about the long-term situation. And they may be the kind under the, hire, fire, rearrange the furniture, part of their demonstrating value, or at least the perception of value is like, let's shake things up. If that happens, you're probably not going to make it through the executive change. In that case, be ready. That's why you want to avoid a client concentration situation. That's where one client is more than 20% of your business, whether it's a client or a referral source, like a referral partner kind of thing. That's not ideal. You want that to be less than 20%. So, yes, some do shop around. On the other hand, the clients who see you as the trusted advisor, they're not going to shop around.
Hmm.
When you tell them that, prices in the coming year are going up 20%, they may not love it, but they feel like they're getting way more than that in value, and they're going to say yes to the increase. So some for sure want to shop around, ideally work on building relationships with clients who want you for the long haul.
That's great advice, Karl. Um, I think we have time for one more question. I have a
Yeah.
great one here that came in asking for a bit of a clarification for us to dive into it a little bit more, and
Mhm.
that's around revenue attribution. I think a little over a year ago, for example, we launched multi-touch attribution inside of our platform, and Some marketers use that, and some use first touch, some use last touch attribution. And obviously being able to, as an agency, understand it and the pros and cons of the different ones are very important. But what else would you say about attribution?
So I am not individually an expert on attribution. My clients are the experts, and the CMOs and the CMO group are the experts. It is worth considering within the CMO group. I've noticed that there are some people who are more focused on attribution than others. And so they're the ones sharing what their best practices are, or the latest software they've tried, or things like that. When it comes to learning, when people are circulating articles around, the primary place that people mention getting the resources from is Harvard Business Review, HBR, which has, of course, marketing content, but it is not solely a marketing focus or an in-depth marketing kind of thing. So I am not an expert on revenue attribution myself, but I guess my advice is understand it better, understand the different models. As you said, first, last, multi-touch, so that when your clients need help, ideally you're the one bringing it up first, rather than the client saying, hey, I saw an article about revenue attribution. How would I get started doing that? Ideally, you brought it up first, being proactive rather than reactive.
It's great. I think ultimately we probably need to do an entire session on revenue attribution. There's enough there to dig into. So I think we'll probably get that scheduled. Thanks for the question, Lee.
I'd love to be there, right? As I start using SharpSpring software, I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Hey, Karl, just one final thing. What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh, gosh. I'll save that answer for the challenge that I have for everyone at the very end.
That's perfect. Okay, that's perfect. So, well, let's go back to the slides then, if we can. And again, stick around here, but I just want to make sure that I mentioned a few final things here as we're getting ready to close out the webinar. So first of all, obviously, thank you for joining us. Loved having our existing partners here for this session, as well as anybody that's joining us for the first time. Welcome and great having you. On September 15th, we've got the next session here for Revenue Rockstars. And again, some great agency partners here. We've got Cleartail Marketing, McGee from there, Jason from Cultivize, Patrick from Search User Online Marketing. And they're going to be digging into from a seat at the table to running the table, how modern marketers are winning revenue. And so that should be a great session. Again, you're gonna hear firsthand from some agency partners that are doing real great marketing. And so here we are to the concert ticket giveaway, and we are excited about this. We just want to stay in the Rockstar concert theme. I think a lot of us are feeling maybe like we haven't seen live music in a long time, or the theater, or maybe a sporting event. So you could use this gift certificate for any of these. And we're going to do a live spinner here. If Elise, our producer, can help us out. Let's go to the spinner, and then I'll announce the winner. Take it away, Elise. Trust me, it's spinning. It might be a little bumpy on your video here, but it's spinning, and we'll see those are all of the people that have signed up for the webinar again. So if you missed it this time and didn't get signed up, you're watching it on live stream, sign up and you'll be part of this giveaway the next time around. So we have Mayor H. Congratulations, you're a winner of the concert tickets. And rock on, Mayor, and excited that you joined us today. And let's go back to the last few slides here, and we'll help Karl or have Karl finish us out.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in the Fast Fail Sales Process Workbook, I believe we're sharing the link again if you didn't get that at bit.ly/agency workbook. I think you'll like it. Remember, the number one takeaway from what we've shared, obviously you may have a number of things, but the thing that if you were to take just one is that CMOs are human too. You can position yourself, your agency, as the helper with the client as the hero. It will help your agency grow. And Chip, to your question of, was there something I didn't ask? I have a challenge for everyone listening. Coming from an agency operations background, it's not enough to just get new ideas. You need to apply them, or ideally you would apply them. So here's my challenge for everyone listening. Do an inventory of all your clients. How well do you know each client's personal and professional goals? Based on the results of that, you can decide what to do next to help you grow your agency this year and beyond. Thanks, and good luck out there.
Thanks so much, Karl, and thanks to everybody that joined us today, and looking forward to seeing you on the next session of Revenue Rockstars. And we have the link there in the chat if you're not signed up yet.